Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Outsiders.
I'm Todd Pickering.
I'm Seth Austin.
We're a couple of actors stuck on the outside trying to make our way to the inside of the biz.
Hollywood, baby.
Hollywood.
Hollywood. So we should mention our email address.
I was going to remind you.
Thank you, Todd. If you want, what is it? What is it, Todd?
It's the Outsiders Biz, B-I-Z, at gmail.com.
That's the Outsiders Biz, B-I-Z, at gmail.com.
It's like Liza with a Z.
It's just like that. I mean, I think that was really our inspiration.
Was it?
Was the Manellis? No.
Was it?
I mean,
you set the email up.
There's always room for, no, it absolutely wasn't. I thought that's just the way to
because if it's
it.
B-U-S, it's the Outsiders Bus.
The Outsiders Bus. And
so email us if you have any acting questions, you need us to pick you up and drop you off at the doctor's.
Yeah. No.
What's the topic today, Seth?
So the topic today is, it's another post from this gentleman named Marcus Wilson. He posted in LA Actors Circle. It is a Facebook group. Highly recommend if you're just getting yourself on the map as an actor out there. If you're trying to get to LA, if you are in LA, fresh to the biz, old in the biz, get yourself into this Facebook group. This guy, Marcus Wilson, he posted, "Why is listening such a hard concept for actors to learn? Many people think it just means hearing something, but I see the great actors, the great stars and professionals listen and react so well in movies. Does anyone have any exercises I can practice alone to become a better listener? Does anybody know a teacher that specializes in this?" So I saw this post and I thought it couldn't be a better topic for us, especially, for newer actors. What's that?
It's a great question.
Yeah, it's an incredible question. I think that listening is such a huge chunk of what acting is, or what great acting is about. Being in the moment and reacting truthfully to what you get from your partner, from their words, from what they're giving to you, right? And so, first of all, I want to tackle the first part of this that I want to tackle is, why is listening such a hard concept for actors to learn? Now, he's talking about listening as actors are trained to listen, which is, so the quote you posted, Todd, it basically said that actors listen from the heart, right? And
the Oscar Wilde poster referring to, or a different one?
Yeah, there was one you posted that said that, it's about listening from the heart. I don't think it was Oscar Wilde, but
oh, I remember. Let me find it.
It's okay. But basically,
no, it's a good quote. It's pay attention to what people are saying, not just with your ears, but with your heart. Right. That was Maxine Hong Kingston, a writer actually, as opposed to somebody in the biz. But no, that's a great quote. I like that. Go on.
Yeah, and so I think I'm taking a Meisner class right now, and that's what the Meisner technique, especially at the very beginning, drills into you, really. I mean, they want to get you listening from your heart. They want to get you out of your head, and they want to get you listening from your heart and responding impulsively.
Responding impulsively.
Yes, not editing yourself, not responding intellectually. The idea being that if you're in your head, you're dead.
Ooh, I like that too.
Yeah, you're not thinking. Ever on stage, you're listening and you're responding, especially at the beginning. That's their foundation. So in real life, the problem is if you respond like an actor is trained to respond, you're going to end up in some hot water pretty quickly, if you really truly do that, right? If someone, like, for instance, if you're wearing a hat and someone walks by you and says, "I don't like your hat," and in real life, if that rubs you the wrong way and you respond as if that rubs you the wrong way, you might find yourself in an altercation pretty quickly, because that can escalate, right? So in real life, we're taught to say something like, that's cool, man. See you, have a good day. You let those things kind of roll off your back. Now, unless it's specific to the scene, to the direction that a director is giving you, you want to learn as an actor to, for the basis of your training anyway, to respond with that impulse, right? If someone says, "Hey man, I don't like your hat," and your response is, "Well, go fuck yourself." If that's what's in if that's what all your being is saying you want to say to that person, as an actor, it behooves you to respond in that way, and so that's basically what the Meisner technique tries to drill into you. So it starts off with repetition, which people love to sort of lambast, but it is, everyone knows that and most people agree anyway, that it is extremely valuable, but it is an easy thing to poke fun at. So because
listening or repetition?
The repetition exercise, right? So if I say your hair is red, you say back to me,
my hair is red.
That's the second step of the repetition exercise, right? The first step is to literally say exactly what the person is saying.
Look at this. We're in a class right now.
So we're in a class. We're doing the exercise a little bit right now.
Okay. Now I'm ready.
You have a weird look on your face.
You have a weird look on your face.
I have a weird look on my face?
I have a weird look on my face?
You have a weird look on your face. See, we didn't even, we're not even necessarily playing it right now, right? Because in the first iteration of the exercise, you're supposed to say exactly what the person said to you. Like exactly, word perfect. So if I say,
even
you have a weird look on your face, you say, you have a weird look on your face. And then I repeat back to you, you have a weird look on your face.
You second time said I.
Oh, did I? So I fucked it up. Yeah.
You're the one that switched. I thought I was supposed to repeat anything you said.
Yeah, no. So I totally screwed it up, which is fine. I mean, the point is, so what you're supposed to do in this, the point of this is that it takes the idea of having to remember lines out of it, right? So that you're never in your head trying to remember what I'm supposed to say next. The whole point is just to repeat back what you hear. And then you quickly move on to point of view. Right. So if I say you have a weird look on your face, you say, I have a weird look on my face. You're responding from your own point of view. And then you go back and forth from there. And then you eventually change it when you feel it needs to be changed.
Is the third step.
Yeah. Oh. Like is the changing of the repetition. And so, there's this book, I'm going to hold it up so that everyone can see it. It's called The Actor's Art and Craft. It's by William Esper. William Esper is this book actually, and this is not just my take on it. It's widely regarded as actually being better than Sanford Meisner's own book on acting, because it goes into a lot more detail. I mean, what I just sort of tried to explain very quickly in this repetition exercise, I mean, it goes into deep detail in this book. I think it's one of the most valuable books that I have ever read on acting. And I will need to reread it, over and over and over again. Also, Todd, you had mentioned in our little prep for this, like some exercises that people can do by themselves, because that was one of the other parts of this gentleman's question.
Well, I would say one of the number one exercises you can do is use real life. And to learn about listening, my number one piece of advice is to listen. And I'm not kidding. I probably have learned some of my best listening techniques at actual auditions, specifically for television and film. When you show up at the casting office, I have a million questions because I'm nervous.
Right.
Most of them are stupid. What color hair? Is it a male or a female in there? Are they nice? Are they mean? All these things. If you get there first, do not be late. Get there early enough. Check in, sign your name, and sit down and listen. All of the dumb questions you have will be answered by other people. And you start seeing the dynamics between actors. I mean, between people, not actors, between somebody that shows up, between people that aren't listening. Their job is actually to listen, and they're not listening when they're given directions. And I'll say this too, it calms my nerves because I am actively listening to get information. And I'm looking at somebody else that's not listening. And I'm looking at the dynamic, and I'm looking at the casting director literally making the decision. I can see in their eyes, I'm not sending that woman's tape in. If I send her tape in and they like her and put her on set, I'm going to get in trouble for putting her on that set.
Yeah.
And again, the editing part of me, I've almost gone up to somebody and said, maybe you should just tell them you're sick and you need to leave now, because they're not going to send your tape in anyway.
Yeah.
And sure enough, go into the room and they ask another dumb question just to cement. And I can see in the casting director's eye, yep, definitely not sending that woman's tape in. And of course, if she's my partner, I'm screwed, but she wasn't on this one. So I felt even better. And the woman that I read with was an amazing listener. And I think my audition was great because all I did was let her do the work, and I just listened. She cracked me up and gave me ideas, and I moved forward.
So I think this is really valuable, Todd, because what you're getting at is how practicing listening as an actor can help you, like practicing the technique of listening so that you can do it properly for the work is actually going to help you get the job as well, because you're going to be more in tune with everything that is going on around you. Right. And for those of people who aren't actors, I really think that it could benefit everyone, right? Because you're going to your emotional intelligence is going to go through the roof. If you get really good at listening, and the other really valuable thing that I think you said about sort of relaxing, and just sort of how focusing on listening and taking everything in can help you relax. And I would add to that in order to do it, to get to the place where you can listen to begin with, you should work on relaxing. That's a big part of the Meisner technique that I take. And I haven't mentioned this again, but I'm at Playhouse West. That is the name of the Meisner school that I'm at. So the neighborhood Playhouse was started in New York by Sanford Meisner. And then Playhouse West was started out here by Robert Carnegie, and with Sanford Meisner's blessing. And Sanford Meisner actually came to Playhouse West quite a lot and taught here and there. So a lot of the teachers that I study with, they learned directly from Sanford Meisner and from his protege, Robert Carnegie. And the point there is that one of the things they talk about is the relaxation. And one of the best ways to be able to listen, to be able to take the whole room in is to get rid of those nerves, right? And I think a lot of what happens, and Michael Shurtleff talks about it in his book, again, to bring back the book Audition, is actors ask really inane questions, the questions that people have asked over and over again. There's no real good reason to ask those questions in the room. And if they were more in tune with the room, there would be no reason to ask those questions. And if they would only ask questions that are actually valid and that are actually going to help them with their audition. What were you going to say, Todd? I'm going to interrupt.
That's great. I mean, what you just said, if you're going to ask a question, careful the answer. So if you ask a question about the character, is this character such and such? And you think your answer, is this character rich? Oh no, she's very poor. Oh crap. I was paying her very wealthy. Well, you shouldn't have if you were unsure. You should have played her neutral so that when you get the answer to your question, okay, then I'll make a few different choices. Don't panic, but I practiced all these choices.
So you really hit the nail on the head, because what Michael Shurtleff says is, actors will come in, they will ask questions, and then they will do their audition as if they had not heard our answer to their question, right? So that again gets back to the listening. They weren't really listening to the answer to the very question that they asked in that room. They didn't make those adjustments, so it doesn't seem like they're listening.
I don't know if this is a slight digression, but it is about listening, and it reminded me of Michael Shurtleff and when I auditioned for 12th Night for San Francisco Shakespeare Company, I worked so hard on my comedy monologue, and I had it down pat. Me and my best friend worked on it. We giggled our asses off. I had an inspiration, and we went in groups of 10. We had a warm-up. The guy was a physical theater director, so he insisted to do a group of 10 warm-up, and then the 10 monologues would go, which was nice because it got rid of nerves.
Sure.
Well, I was number 1 in my group of 10.
Oh, man.
And right before we left, he goes, oh, now, by the way, I have just decided to set this in Louisiana, and I want everybody to do their monologues with Southern accents, please.
Just cold, like no.
That was the prep we got.
Yeah, but you didn't like get a minute to go back and do it.
Well, no, then he says, who's number 1 in our group? And I said, that would be me. He says, Todd, would you like a couple minutes to work on your monologue before you go, since you're the first one? And I thought about the fact that nothing I chose to do will work with the Southern accent. And also, am I able to do the scanning with the Southern? So never mind. I said, nah, I'll just do it. Because I felt that if I went into the other room and tried it out loud and it didn't hit the beats, I would panic and then have a terrible audition. And let me tell you again about feeling superior. The guy that was number 2 was really pissed off that I said I wouldn't take 2 minutes, because that meant he only got 2 minutes.
He only got 2 minutes. Yeah, you screwed that second guy, but he was listening. He was listening really well. He got pissed off. So.
Yeah, and I got cast, actually.
Well, all right.
But my point was, I had practiced
a digression for Todd to brag about his casting.
Well, but I listened to what he said and I went, there's no way I can rehearse this. And I actually have to listen to the words and what I'm doing. So here's where the listening part does come. I seriously just thought of all of this. So, because I'm trying to help answer your questions and answer this actor's question. So when you're doing Shakespeare's poetry, you really should rehearse it a bunch of different ways, which is something I did. Actually, a technique is to rehearse Shakespeare in different accents.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And I think to memorize my lines, I did do it in a Southern accent.
Well, I think one of the deaths
listening.
Of acting is rigidity. I mean, the death of anything in life is often rigidity, right? So how do you avoid that, right? How do you avoid getting locked into a certain way of doing something? And that's one good way of that, right? You have Shakespeare, you learn the words cold, and then you do them in different accents, you do it different ways, so that when you get in there, you are, again, more relaxed, more ready to listen to whatever is given to you. How can you listen if you're locked into a certain way of doing stuff, right? And so whatever method you choose, I just went into great detail and I kind of beat my Bible about Meisner technique. But what we were talking about, again, in our prep leading up to this was new for me. I hadn't taken Meisner technique before coming to Los Angeles, and I've booked gigs, I've done a lot of theater, but I do remember that along the way, pretty much all of my acting teachers in middle school, high school, college, they all talked about listening and how important it was to stay engaged in the scene. And so whatever your method for learning listening is, it's utterly important, because it's going to be really hard if you don't, because you're going to get locked into it, certain ways of doing things. You're not going to be as active on stage, especially on stage, right? When the audience is looking at the whole picture of what's going on. There's no cut back and forth. Like, how can you remain engaged in the scene if you don't have lines, if you're not listening, right? You're just kind of standing there. So the main action is happening stage right. Say you are stage left, but you don't have any lines for a while. You need to be listening. You need to be engaged with what's going on stage. You need to have reactions within yourself, so that when the audience glances over at you, you are fully present with what's happening on stage. And however that gets you there, you don't have to use the Meisner technique.
Well, again, to quote, I study at Graham Shields' studio, something that Graham had said that I just realized I had said in discussing about watching this woman screw up her audition. And I can't say these for an ultimate fact. I didn't watch her audition. Maybe she was brilliant, but watch for the subtext, because that's part of active listening too, is that you see that the casting director's he's listening and to what she's saying and making, I can see on his face, he is not happy. Yeah. He is in charge of sending these tapes on to the directors.
Yeah, I mean, you're not listening to words as an actor so much as you're listening to the subtext. You're listening to how the words are said, right?
And when if somebody's captivating us, we look at them because we're looking for that subtext. If you go to a audition, or a bar is a great place where you're looking at people and you can't even hear them. So you're looking at them, listening. You can see one person talking and you can see the other person listening.
Yeah.
The person listening is always looking at the other person, unless they're bored. If they're looking at their phone, they're not listening, and you can see them actively not listening. But the person talking sees images and is telling stories, and the only time they look at the person that they're talking to is to make sure that they are listening to them.
And to check in. And so, if the person talking is thinks that they're making a really fun, cool point, or a really heavy, important point, they may look back to see how that's landing, because they're looking for some kind of reaction from their listener, and then if they get it, then that's going to propel them on to the next part of their story. And if they feel like that person's not listening, their story's probably going to lose momentum.
Or they're going to make extra points. They see, points, they see not 1, 2, 3, 4 points like a game, but they're going to go, this isn't sinking in. Let me explain it a different way. I mean, it should be apparent in the script.
Yeah.
There are, if your line, it's another part of listening. If your line is, "What? Hey, I'm talking here. Listen to me," and the actors actively listening, then they're not paying attention to the script, because they should have been on their phone or staring out the window.
Sure. I mean, and that's what comes later in at least the Meisner training is, you have to take those things into account, of course, right? There's certain character things, there's certain directorial things that the script demands that you have to adapt to, right? And show that you're listening in a different way, that you're listening to the demands of those things. But at the beginning, the basis of the training is what I just talked about.
Can you think of any techniques? This person asked this question, without taking a class or working with somebody?
It's a good question, Todd. Someone in the thread had mentioned taking 20 minutes a day for a couple of weeks and focusing on like an object and just really like taking it in, and then kind of like seeing how you respond to the different things in the object. And I'm a little skeptical about that.
Yeah, I'm not buying that.
Marcus responded. He said, "Oh, thank you so much. This has been so helpful." I don't know if I agree with that. Yeah, and I can see
that's focus.
It's focus. Yeah,
that's helping with focus. So
yeah.
that could. Okay, now I'm not completely disagreeing with it, because I guess this person's giving them an exercise of focusing.
Right. I just don't know that it's a listening exercise necessarily, right? Because
correct.
You're not getting body language from an object. You're not getting subtext from an object. You're not getting. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if you're really going to up your emotional intelligence.
I seriously think going to here we are in a pandemic, but watching the dynamics of people listening, not listening, talking when people talk over each other. You can even see it on a phone. People that are actively, you can see people's faces when they're upset and they're listening.
And you can tell when you're talking to someone on the phone if they're really listening to you. I'm laughing because I'm thinking about all the conversations I've had with my brother on the phone where I could just tell he's watching the Mets game in the background. And that is not an exaggeration. That's what happens a lot. But and you can tell, so I'm just usually like, well, all right, this was fun. I'll talk to you another time.
I think we have to say, this sounds super obvious because we've been saying it. We just said it a couple times, but I think you have to get into a class.
I think you do. You can, especially if you're just, if you're just getting into this game, if you're just trying to figure all this stuff out, if you're brand new to the game, I think learning it on your own is going to be hard, if not impossible. And I don't want to give advice. I don't want to promote that because it might stunt people in a way too. I don't want to give any kind of advice that might stunt people, get them to I need to focus on this object. And I don't know, I just feel like it could be counterproductive or something to give someone that advice if they're not a little bit initiated into the world, if they've never taken a class before.
Back to repetition. the number one, when the stupid answer is, well, to learn how to listen, you have to listen. So that means somebody else has to speak. At the very least, FaceTime, we have mobile phones now, read scenes, cold read scenes. And part of it is, I have to say this too, part of it is the repetition and the skill of memorizing lines, because if your lines are not memorized, you can't listen. Dame Maggie Smith said, and I tell you, I'm not Dame Maggie Smith, if you haven't noticed.
Todd, have I been blind this whole time? Have I not seen you as an old dowager countess type?
She said that you memorize your lines and then you actively forget them.
Right.
Actively forget them.
So that you can listen and respond as if you didn't know what you were going to say next, because you actively forgot what you were going to say. Now, what's interesting about that, Todd, I'm so glad you brought this up. First of all, though, I do want to say that I feel like this is a more advanced thing, right? And I feel like Marcus's question came from a more beginner thing. So let's differentiate that, right? This was a thing that I kind of came upon myself. No one actually ever taught me this actively forgetting thing, but I used to be very, very good at just memorizing my lines like cold right away. And so it kind of came naturally for me to be able to forget them so that when someone said something to me, it could just come back. If that makes sense.
Yes.
So
but I do think sometimes, even as a beginning actor, you need to know sometimes the level you're not ready for yet. But the thing you hear over and over and over again in acting classes, or when a monologue is done for a agent or casting director or director, if you don't have it memorized, you can't listen, you can't respond. If you're looking for those lines instead of looking for, so there is a technique. I would say one of the techniques of listening is to memorize stuff.
Yeah, if you're doing lines, yeah. That does really help me. I'll throw out there that there's another technique for auditioning. It's Margie Haber is a very well known, I guess you could say famous casting director at this point, because she's written her own sort of audition technique, and it's the Haber phrase technique. It involves the only parts, if you have let's say you have a long speech, the beginning cold, so that you can be up and connecting with your partner at the very beginning of it. The very end of it, and the middle of it, you just you don't necessarily know, and you're looking down and you're going through it, and then you come back up to them occasionally, but you don't focus on 100% memorization. And she has various reasons for that. And it's just a different technique. And I think it's interesting, especially when you don't have a lot of time to memorize. I know my brain just isn't as good at memorization anymore, especially if I only have like one day to memorize something. If my audition's the next day, if it's like a 5-page audition, and there's lots of dialogue, and maybe I don't think the script, maybe I'm not connecting with the script directly, it can be really hard to just cold memorize in that amount of time. So, Margie's technique can be good. But again, let's be safe here and say that again, this is it's a more advanced technique. Sure. I think if you're going to look into that Haber phrase technique, but I think that there's something to it.
Again, for a beginning actor, is good to know, and maybe this is a good thing to end on right now, is that if you are doing that cold read that you were just talking about, big chunks, there's a lot of lines, there's no way you can have it memorized, or they've given you an extra scene, say, and want you to try it.
Right.
You are more likely to get the part from you listening to somebody telling you how their father beat them and getting emotionally attached to the thing you're hearing, and they finish the story and you're processing it and you realize, oh crap, I've got a line. And then you look down to find the line.
And you're like, yeah.
The director will go, wow, that's a good actor, because they were listening to the scene before, meaning that it's okay to drop a line.
Oh, of course. Now,
been listening.
Now, the advanced move there is to not get jarred, or, jostled, screwed up by the fact that you have forgotten this line, not get nervous. You want to hold that moment, right? You're
Sure,
getting
but
emotional.
Even the looking down to go, oh, I did screw up is okay. If you keep it calm, knowing
Right.
that, oh, that must be my line. Yep, it's my line. And I'm back in it.
Exactly. You're holding on to that moment. You haven't lost it. You haven't come out of it. Your nerves haven't taken over and told you, oh crap, I forgot my line. Like, what do I do now? No, you forgot your line. You're still connected. You're listening. You're taking your partner in. Forgot your line? No big deal. You're crying, whatever the emotion is, you're angry, you look down, and then you come back with that next line. Maybe it has the same emotional weight, maybe it doesn't, maybe it's changed. But if you're relaxed and not nervous, then you can continue to listen. And so again, I think this goes back to the relaxation. Especially when you're not completely memorized. I think being relaxed and open and just chill about it is so paramount.
So I think we have then clarified that relaxation is important to listening.
Yes.
And maybe that's a little unrealistic, but even if you're a tense, nervous character, you should start with a relaxed instrument body.
Oh yeah.
Then put the tension on top of it, as opposed to using your real tension, because then you're just.
Exactly. So that's a whole other thing, right? And
I hope you've all listened to what we've said. Have you been listening?
Listeners, have you been listening, listeners? Because that's kind of your job.
We're done.
Yeah,
and you're just going to have to rewind the whole damn thing and listen to it again.
We're out. You have failed as listeners. Okay, this is not on us any longer. We just laid it all out for you. No.
They've fallen asleep and it's off.
Oh yeah, and Seth.
Good night's sleep. That's another tip.
That was a fun nap. Yeah, I was listening to you in my sleep.
That doesn't work, by the way. We'll tell you too. Putting the script under your pillow will not work. Yeah,
learning your lines by osmosis. I think learning them as you go to sleep is a great. Now, here's another tidbit that I always learn, that my teacher always drops on us, is, and apparently this is something Robert Duvall used to do, is he would learn his lines while he was going to sleep at night. The theory being that it opens up your brain in a way, or being tired, that stage of being almost asleep, your brain enters sort of a more open, malleable state, I suppose, so it can get those words in there. So that the idea being that when you wake up in the morning and you look at it again, they're more there than they were, the night before. What are we at? Are we at time, Todd?
Yeah, we are.
All right.
And I can't listen anymore. That was painful.
Yeah. There's one more thing I want to say. There's one more thing that I keep forgetting to bring up. I invested in a movie. I also acted in this movie a couple years ago. It's called Unbelievable, followed by several exclamation points. And it's a Trekkie film. It's a parody Trekkie film. And
where can I watch this?
So that's the thing, right? It's coming up. The premiere is tomorrow, August 1st. Yeah. So there's going to be a virtual premiere. And then we'll see where it goes from there. This thing should be really interesting. There's going to be it's going to be a virtual convention type atmosphere, right? You're going to have a little icon that's your face, and everyone's going to have their own icons. And then you can move around the screen at this convention type thing. And then when the two icons touch, your screens will pop up. You'll be able to see the person that you're touching. And so there's going to be a screening of the film followed by all of this stuff where you can talk with other people who were there about the movie. And then,
so the icons are not the movie. That's
no. Yes.
Got it.
So thank you, Todd.
We're going into new territory where that could be a thing.
Right. So
we'll have to talk after the show about producing something now.
Yeah. One of these interesting things that is coming out of this whole quarantine, lockdown, COVID stuff is virtual film conventions. So this company that's doing this is out of Germany. They've only been around since March. And so apparently some of the big wigs from Paramount and Lionsgate have bought tickets to this virtual premiere.
Really
so
cool.
They're gonna watch our film. And then they're going to stay for the event afterwards, which involves, some private rooms with some of the actors where fanboys can ask questions and stuff like that. And there's going to be people moving around at this convention, talking to each other virtually. I think it's really interesting. We'll see. I think that I invested in this film, so I hope that this little virtual red carpet yields some good results. And I'm in it. I'm in it for a short bit. I was supposed to have 2 scenes. The day of shooting, things got a little crazy, and I ended up only getting 1 scene. But one of the pictures that Todd posted of me is in this weird like flower costume. I was playing a plant essentially, and I introduced.
But did you listen?
Did I listen? That's a good question. It was hard because there was,
We'll have to look. But then again, he's playing a plant. Those are special restrictions.
Yeah, super restrictive. No, and I was introducing Snoop Dogg. So I like bring him. He's like the big star in the film, and I introduce him into the worlds of the movie. So
cool.
I'm super excited about it, and I'll put a link in the bio part of the YouTube and everything. So if you want to get a ticket to the virtual premiere. All right. We rambled on. We went over time as usual. Thank you all for listening. God, you better have listened.